Today, we're diving into something wild, a hidden battle that's happening for control of your mind. We're going to pull back the curtain on how the media you scroll through every single day isn't just entertaining you. Nope, it's physically rewriting the way you think, how you see the world, and even the words you use. So let me just start by asking you this, straight up. Do you really control what you think? Or is your thought process actually being shaped by forces you don't even notice? We're about to get into how your brain's basic operating system makes it, kind of vulnerable to the world we live in now. Okay, first things first, we have to understand a really crucial concept. Your brain doesn't just passively see the world like a camera recording a movie. Not at all. It actively builds your reality from the ground up, piece by piece.
And look, this might sound like some new 21st century problem, but this idea is almost 100 years old. Way back in 1928, psychologists already knew that what we see isn't pure. It's a mix, right? It's a blend of raw data coming from our senses, but it's heavily colored by our memories, our imagination, basically all our past experiences.
So how does your brain even do this? Well, it creates what those early psychologists called mental types. You can think of these as like mental shortcuts or templates. When you look at a table, you don't just see a bunch of lines and angles and a flat surface. Your brain instantly jumps to, that's a table. It categorizes it. And your mind accepts this abstract idea of table as more real than all that raw sensory data. It's how our brains make a really chaotic world feel consistent.
And to manage all of this, your brain has this little internal editor, something they used to call a subjective sensor. Before you even open your mouth to say something, this internal sensor runs a check. It compares what you're about to say against your entire life experience, all those social rules you've picked up without even trying, and decides if it's okay to say out loud. It's that little voice in your head that goes, yeah, maybe don't say that.
So how does all this translate to what we know today? Well, those early psychological ideas, they basically laid the groundwork for what modern neuroscience can now actually show us is physically happening inside our skulls.
This brings us to a really powerful idea. Your brain learns from what it sees. Scientists call this your visual diet. And it's just like a nutritional diet shapes your body. Your visual diet, every single image, every video, every post you see, is the raw training data that your brain uses to build its model of reality.
And I want to be clear, this isn't just a metaphor. It's a real, physical process called neuroplasticity. Your brain has this incredible, almost science fiction ability to literally rewire itself based on your experiences. The things you see and do over and over again change its physical structure. Your brain isn't set in stone. It's constantly under construction.
So, what is this operating system? How does it work? Well, a leading theory in neuroscience is something called predictive coding. Your brain is basically a prediction machine, and to save a ton of energy, it doesn't bother processing every little detail of the world. Instead, it builds a model of what it thinks is going on, and then just makes predictions about what it expects to see next. It only snaps to full attention when reality doesn't match its prediction.
And here is where we connect the dots between the old and the new. That old school idea of the subjective sensor, you can totally see it as part of this predictive system. When your brain's prediction is wrong, like when you're about to say something that just doesn't fit the social situation, it generates what's called a prediction error. That error signal, that's the modern neurological version of that old sensor at work, forcing your internal model to update and learn for next time.
Okay, so your brain builds reality using a predictive model that it's constantly rewiring based on your visual diet. Now for the big question, what happens when that system gets hacked?
This brings us to something called cultivation theory. The idea here is that if you're exposed to a certain kind of media for long enough, it starts to cultivate your perception of the world. Your brain's internal model starts to look less and less like physical, real-world reality and more like the synthetic reality from your media feed. The classic example of this is mean world syndrome, where people who watch a ton of news start to believe the world is way more dangerous than it actually is. Their predictive model has been completely rewired by their media diet.
And look, this isn't just a theory. We can see the physical evidence in brain scans. This data is pretty stark. Just look at that top row. Heavy media multitaskers, we're talking people constantly jumping between apps, they show lower gray matter density in a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. That's like the CEO of your brain for focus and emotional control. And the result? Exactly what you'd expect. Less attention and worse emotional regulation. Now look at the bottom row. This one's going to hit home for a lot of us. Constant exposure to short-form video is linked to reduced activity in the frontal cortex. That can lead to a collapse in your working memory and make it almost impossible to do deep reading. These aren't just bad habits, people. They are measurable, physical changes to the very architecture of your brain.
And this whole process gets thrown into hyperdrive by one key factor. Yep, you guessed it, the algorithm.
Remember how your brain just wants to save energy by correctly predicting the world? Well, algorithms exploit this perfectly. An echo chamber feels so comfortable because it gives your brain exactly what it wants: a world with no surprises, no conflict, no prediction errors. The algorithm just keeps feeding you content that confirms what your internal model already believes. It makes you feel smart, it makes you feel right, and it makes the platform feel like a really cozy place to be.
And this creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop. It's simple, really. You interact with some content. The algorithm predicts your biases based on that. It then curates a feed to confirm those biases, which in turn reinforces and strengthens your brain's internal model. And the end result of this cycle? Homogenization. Over time, your thoughts and even the way you express yourself begin to mirror that narrow slice of reality in your feed. Cognitive diversity just shrinks. And this process, it goes way beyond just our opinions. It is now starting to affect language itself. Think about it. So much of our communication is now helped along by AI tools that are trained on the statistical average of all human text. The result is that our language becomes flatter, more predictable. We actually risk losing stylistic flair and unique expression, because an algorithm is subtly redefining what normal communication sounds like.
Okay, I know that all sounds pretty bleak, but there is a way out. Because your brain is plastic, because it can be rewired, you actually have the power to consciously direct that process.
This slide illustrates the choice you have perfectly. On one hand, you can let your brain change passively. Scientists call this experience-dependent neuroplasticity. It's just letting your media environment mindlessly reinforce your existing brain pathways. Or you can choose to engage in self-directed neuroplasticity, where you actively and intentionally choose what you consume in order to consciously build a better, stronger brain.
So how do you actually take back control? Well, it starts by curating your visual diet. Make a conscious choice to seek out complex, long-form, diverse content. It means practicing what some call deep neural engagement, reading difficult books and articles to literally rebuild your attention pathways. It means actively hunting for evidence that disproves what you already believe, to force yourself out of that comfortable echo chamber. And maybe most importantly, it just means pausing to reflect. Actually ask yourself, how is what I'm consuming right now shaping the person I'm becoming?
So I'll just leave you with this final thought. We know for a fact that your environment is constantly physically rewiring your brain. That's not up for debate. The only question left is, who are you going to let be the architect? Are you going to be in charge, or are you going to hand the blueprints over to the algorithm?